They thought no one was watching. They thought their cruelty would go unnoticed. Just another moment of humiliation for a girl who already carried enough pain. Inside a small-town diner, where people usually came for coffee, breakfast, and a quiet escape from life's troubles, something unthinkable happened. A young disabled girl, struggling to enjoy her meal, became the target of bullies who thought her weakness gave them power. They laughed at her, mocked her, and before anyone could stop it, one of them raised a hand and slapped her across the face. The room froze. Forks stopped clinking against plates. Conversations died in mid-sentence. The sound of that slap echoed louder than anything else in the diner. The girl's eyes welled with tears, but what cut deeper than the sting on her cheek was the silence that followed. Nobody moved. Nobody stood up. It was as if the whole room had been paralyzed with fear. You see, bullies thrive on silence. They thrive when people convince themselves it's not their problem. And in that moment, the girl sat alone, humiliated, her heart breaking, not just because of a slap, but because not a single person came to defend her. The bullies smirked, proud of what they had done. They believed they had won. After all, who would stand up for a disabled girl against them? They strutted out of the diner, laughing as if they had proven some cruel point about the world. But life has a strange way of rewriting stories. Sometimes, justice walks in when you least expect it. And on that day, justice didn't come from a police officer, or a teacher, or even the silent customers in the diner. No, justice rumbled in on the roar of motorcycles. An hour after that cruel slap, the sound of engines filled the parking lot. Black leather, heavy boots, and thunderous machines announced the arrival of a group that most people would never expect to be heroes. A biker gang, rough, intimidating, the kind of people many would instinctively avoid, pushed open the doors of that quiet diner. And in that moment, the story shifted. Because these bikers weren't there to cause trouble. They weren't there for food or drinks. They were there for her. The disabled girl who had been humiliated. The girl who had cried silently at her table. The girl who had thought no one in the world cared. What happened next turned that diner into the stage of an unforgettable lesson. Sometimes, the people you least expect to protect the vulnerable are the very ones who step forward without hesitation. The bullies had left thinking they had gotten away with it, but they had no idea what was waiting for them. And when those bikers walked in, the entire town learned that courage comes in many forms, and sometimes it wears leather and rides on two wheels. The girl's name was Emily. She had been living with a physical disability since birth. Walking was difficult, and her posture sometimes drew unwanted stares. But she was kind-hearted, soft-spoken, and never let her condition define her spirit. That morning, she had come to the diner simply to enjoy breakfast, pancakes and orange juice, her little routine of comfort. The bullies noticed her as soon as she entered. A group of 3 teenagers, restless and arrogant, sitting in the corner booth. They whispered, then laughed, nudging each other. Emily tried to ignore them. She focused on her food, on her book, on anything but the stares cutting into her. But bullies sense vulnerability like predators sense fear. They moved closer. First, it was mocking her walk. Then it was cruel jokes, tossed at her table like poison darts. Emily kept her head down, her cheeks burning, praying they would get bored. But they didn't. Their laughter grew louder, drawing attention from everyone in the diner. Some customers shook their heads, others frowned, but no one stood up. Then came the breaking point. One of the boys leaned over, knocked her juice off the table, and when Emily tried to stop him, he slapped her. Hard. Her body shook, her eyes welled, and silence fell over the room. Not one person intervened. Not one. Emily left the diner shortly after, her meal unfinished. She walked home, fighting tears, wondering why the world could be so cruel. She told herself this was just another day, another reminder of how alone she often felt. But fate had already set a different plan in motion. Because not long after, a man in the diner, someone who had witnessed everything, made a phone call. He wasn't proud that he had stayed silent. He couldn't forgive himself for doing nothing. So he called a friend. And that friend happened to be part of a biker brotherhood, known not just for their tough image, but for protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. An hour later, the rumble of motorcycles shook the quiet streets. The same diner that had been filled with cowardly silence was about to witness something unforgettable. The bikers didn't barge in with anger. They walked in with purpose. They asked about the girl. They wanted to know what had happened. And once the story reached their ears, their faces hardened with resolve. They tracked down the bullies. It didn't take long. Small towns don't hide troublemakers well. The confrontation was not about violence, but about accountability. The bikers surrounded the teens, and with stern voices and unwavering presence, they demanded apologies. They demanded respect. They made it clear. Picking on a disabled girl wasn't just cruel, it was cowardly, and it would not be tolerated. The boys stammered, their arrogance shrinking into fear. Forced to face the weight of their actions, they apologized, not just to the bikers, but to Emily. The bikers brought her back to the diner, walked her inside, and sat with her, turning her isolation into strength. For the first time that day, Emily smiled. Not because the slap had been erased, but because the silence had been broken. The bikers filled that silence with support, showing her that strength doesn't always look the way society expects. Word of the incident spread quickly. People in the town began to question why they hadn't acted. Why took a group of bikers to stand up when so many ordinary citizens had stayed quiet? And perhaps that was the deeper lesson, the reminder that silence enables cruelty, and courage often comes from the most unexpected places. From that day on, Emily wasn't just a disabled girl in town. She was the girl who had an army of unlikely protectors behind her. And those bullies, they never dared to target her, or anyone like her again. Because they had learned that even when the world seems silent, justice can roar in on the sound of motorcycles.